Hello? Hello, hello? Hello? Trying to check if our online colleagues can get us. Samuel, please send a text message to confirm if you can hear us. So, a very good afternoon to you, and thank you for choosing to be with us this afternoon. My name is Manka Kwai. I work for Water Aid Pan-African Program as Advocacy Manager, and I will be serving you this afternoon as the moderator for this session. Before I get started, I would like to say thank you to the NDC partnership for giving us opportunity to share our side event in your pavilion, and also to thank the government of Tanzania, the Vice President's office, and the Minister of Water for being our good partner in preparing this side event. So the title of our side event is From Commitment to Actions, Successes, Challenges, and Lessons Learned from the implementation of the NDC's WASH targets in Tanzania. So we are going to share the experiences of Tanzania in terms of what we have achieved, the challenges we have faced, and the lessons we have learned from implementation of the WASH indicators within the Tanzanian NDCs. And this session has been put together with the collaborative effort from the United Republic of Tanzanian government through the Vice President's office, the Minister of Water, UNICEF Tanzania, Water Aid, Climate Action Network Tanzania, and NDC partnership. So we thank all the partners for making it possible, and we thank you for gracing our session. The objective of the session, as I have said, is to discuss what are the lessons that we have learned from the past 5 years when we were pushing the WASH agenda into the NDC in Tanzania. What are the lessons? What are the challenges? What are the unresolved issues that we need to prioritize when we are updating our next NDC in 2025? So we felt that a COP meeting will offer us an opportunity to discuss this and make sure that we don't leave anything behind that we were not able to address when we were implementing our NDC2. So we have experts from the 2 relevant ministries, and also our partners who are online. They couldn't be here with us today, Stan and Six, but they will be members of the panel. So without wasting time, I would like to invite Madam Mariana, the country engagement for NDC partnership, to give us the welcome remarks. Welcome, and please feel free to express your names because I don't want to misspell anything.
Honorable Engineer Mwajuma Waziri, Permanent Secretary from the Ministry of Water, and all of our guests today, good afternoon. Hanjambo. My name is Mariana Panuncio-Fellman. I'm the Director of Country Engagement for the NDC Partnership Support Unit. I am honored to join this important discussion on the progress, challenges, and lessons learned from the implementation of NDC WASH-related targets in Tanzania. Water represents an increasingly important priority in NDCs, reflecting the impacts that climate change has on water resources and the socioeconomic implications of those impacts across sectors. According to an analysis conducted by the Stockholm International Water Institute, 97 countries included water-related impacts and vulnerabilities and water measures across sectors in the adaptation sections of the second round of NDCs, which was an improvement relative to the first round of NDCs. The growing importance of water is also being reflected in the request for support from the members of the partnership as well. Very briefly, the NDC partnership is an international coalition comprised of more than 230 members over 130 countries, developed and developing, and close to 100 institutional and associate members, all working together to deliver ambitious climate action to achieve the Paris Agreement while driving sustainable development. We are country-driven, with our central focus being to address member countries' requests with a tailored package of expertise, technical assistance, and financial support from member governments and institutions. In the topic of water, 50 developing country members have submitted 631 requests of support related to water. This represents 10% of all requests circulated through the NDC partnership. Various partners have provided support in response to water-related requests, including the World Bank, UNDP, and more recently, the government of the Netherlands, among others. In the case of Tanzania, the water sector is supporting the delivery of Tanzania's current NDC mitigation and adaptation targets, while also contributing to Tanzania's well-being and sustainable economic development. The results and lessons to be learned today can inform the ongoing implementation of Tanzania's current NDC or NDC 2.0 and inform the development of the new NDC 3.0, feeding into the processes that the partnership is currently supporting in Tanzania. Tanzania became a member of the partnership in 2022. And since then, together with NORAD and other members, the NDC partnership has been able to support the recruitment of a strategic NDC in-country facilitator and a climate advisor who are embedded in the Office of the Vice Presidency on Ministry of Finance, the two focal points for the NDC partnership. The NDC partnership is also supporting an NDC impact assessment to evaluate the progress being made to advance the NDC 2.0 targets and actions and feed into the development of the NDC 3.0 once the government is ready to start the process. The partnership is also supporting the update and refinement of Tanzania's NDC implementation plan, which will be used to track implementation progress, improve coordination, and support resource mobilization. Today's discussion on the wash sector can significantly contribute to those efforts. I want to acknowledge our partners already supporting Tanzania's water sector, including WaterAid, UNICEF, the World Bank, and GIZ, among others. As the government of Tanzania builds on the progress and lessons from the wash sector today, we call upon all partners to support Tanzania to ensure an effective implementation of WASH programs and the country's efforts across sectors so that together we can support Tanzania's efforts to deliver on its current NDC and enhance in its ambition on the subsequent one. Asante.
Thank you so much, Madam Mariana. I am happy you have touched about an important research which was done by Stockholm Environmental Institute. In October, in Africa Water Week, we had a privilege to host somebody from that institution, Dr. Diba, who made a presentation, and it is amazing that of all the NDC, updated NDC submitted, the NDC tools, it is only 2% of the submitted NDCs that have indicators on water and sanitation. So still we have a journey to go in terms of integrating issues of water and sanitation into our NDCs. So thank you so much for bringing that. It is relevant to our study event today. And I would like to take this opportunity to welcome Honorable Engineer Mwajuma Waziri, our Permanent Secretary, for official opening remarks. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, all. Honorable Mariana from NDC New York, distinguished delegates from WaterAid Tanzania, Pan-Africa Office in the UK, distinguished delegates from UNICEF Tanzania, distinguished delegates from NDC Partnership Tanzania in Bonn, Germany, Climate Action Network Tanzania, Tanzania government officials from Office of Vice President, Union and Environment, and Ministry of Water, and others. Esteemed participants present physically and online, ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to meet you, and I'm grateful for the good and long-time relationship and partnership between Tanzania and WaterAid, Tanzania and UNICEF, as well as Tanzania and NDC partnership. We are grateful for our fruitful collaboration. Dear participants, this session today is significant as it looks at the implementation of water targets in Tanzania climate plans, namely Nationally Determined Contribution NDC. It is also about what to consider and improve as we revise the NDC in 2025. Therefore, it is taking place at the right time where the government is targeting to increase water supply coverage to 85% in rural and 95% in urban areas by 2025. Dear participants, the NDC are the heart of the Paris Agreement and the achievement of its long-term goals. In the same way, water is central in NDCs as it is affected by impacts of climate change, and on the other hand, water is central to adaptation to climate change. Therefore, the water profile in NDC should be visible with elevated profile. The lessons learned from the 2020-2025 Tanzania NDC in the water sector will shape the designing of the third phase NDC and capitalize on water among many other sectors. Dear participants, COP29 is a financing COP. Therefore, I call upon our partners, WaterAid, UNICEF, NDC partnership, and others to consider financing WASH initiative in Tanzania in line with NDC. We will engage further on this as I look forward for fruitful deliberations. I wish now to declare that this meeting is open. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Honorable Permanent Secretary. And I'm happy to hear about the ambitions that the country has in terms of increasing access to water in Tanzania in both urban and rural areas. It's really relevant. Some of us who are here, access to water is less than a minute away. It requires us to open a tap and get water to drink, water to shower, and water for the sanitation rights. But for the majority in the underserved areas, in rural areas, it requires traveling. So we would like to commend the government because within East Africa, access is around 50% and below. But we see that the country has an ambition to go beyond 80% in in urban areas and 70% in rural areas, which is quite ambitious, and we commend you for that. And we pray that you shall get the resources to make it possible. So without wasting time, I would like to welcome my panelists forward. And I would like to start with Robert Sunday. Robert Sunday is our Assistant Director, Transboundary Water Resources from the Ministry of Water. Next is Dr. Nyashilu Issa, the National Coordinator for NDC from Vice President's Office. Our next panelist is attending online. He couldn't be here. He's the Executive Director for Climate Action Network Tanzania, Mr. Dr. Sixbert Mwanga. And the next panelist is the Engineer Stanislaus Kamwaga, working with UNICEF Tanzania as a WASH specialist. So this will be our key panel discussants for the side event. So I will be asking questions interchangeably, and those who are online, we shall be able to hear what they have to tell us. So to begin with, I would like to start with Sandy, because we are discussing issues of water. Sandy, could you please tell us what were the WASH adaptation and mitigation indicators in the outgoing NDC, and how they were financed and implemented? If you can reflect around those key questions.
Thank you very much, Manka, and the colleagues in this workshop. I just want to thank you for having me in this discussion regarding the water, sanitation, and hygiene in the national determined contribution of the United Republic of Tanzania. So to start with, we are grateful to the Office of NDA for having produced the NDA country report, which is coming to an end next year. So to be specific on the targets which were included regarding water, sanitation, and hygiene, one was to promote climate smart integrated water resources management. Meanwhile, I would say is that in the country, water resource management follows the IWM approach, the integrated water resources management approach. But also there was a target on wastewater management, both in rural and the urban areas. Again, there was a target on climate resilience investment and a suitable water supply and the sanitation services. These were also backed up with supporting development, management, and equitable utilization of transboundary water resources. But the NDC also took note on the programs and mechanisms for assessment, monitoring, and the management of water resources. So this covers the section of the water sector. But since the water sector, the way it is implemented in the country, cuts across the sanitation part. The sanitation part is implemented by the health sector and also the education sector. So specifically for the health sector, we had promotion of climate resilience public health system. Another one was improving early warning systems for climate sensitive diseases. Then again, monitoring climate sensitive diseases surveillance and the reporting systems. So the coming to an end, NDCs had these targets, WASH targets, but also there were targets which were not aligned in the water sector, but in their implementation, you catch up with the water sector and the other sectors. So coming to specific point of how these were financed, I will give a broader picture of financing of these WASH targets in NDC. First, the NDC itself in totality has envisioned a budget of 19 billion United States dollars for the 5 years. Then when you come to the water sector, we are implementing the water sector development program. The program is also in the last phase, which spilled from the second phase and the third phase, so came in between with the NDC time period, the NDC period. So I will speak about the running phase of Water Sector Development Program, which has a budget of 6.47 billion United States dollars for the 5 years. So if we take all this package, in a way, implementation of that builds on the implementation of the NDCs. But we have complementary investments and programs which, through its implementation, also covered the NDC WASH targets. I would mention the Rural Water Supply and Sanitation Program, which is financed by the World Bank in the approach of payment by results. So you are given the capital, and the way you produce, you perform, you get more financing. And this has become one of the successful programs in the country, which has relatively improved water supply coverage in rural areas to 79% by December last year. So this way, if I speak in that at the generality of the implementation, it went to that level. Now, which areas were implemented? I think that is the third segment of the question. If I start with the water resources, one of the areas is catchment conservation, water resources management and the development, which took into account addressing the extremes of floods and drought, so through rainwater harvesting, through small, medium, and strategic dams. Then in the area of transboundary water management and cooperation, it also came into establishment of several projects with neighboring countries to steer up first management of the water, transboundary waters, and the utilization of the same in an equitable manner. Then in the area of sanitation, which is relatively low in the country, this came into the designing when now we are designing mainly the urban projects, water projects. The sanitation component is getting an attention. So I wish to finish by looking into the future. The ministry now is revising the national water policy, which takes into consideration climate affairs, giving it more weight, the public-private partnership, which so we have that envisioning bringing the private sector into the water sector. But mainly we are now taking the route of innovative financing through climate financing and among others. With this, I'm mentioning the African Water Investment Program, which is also cascaded in its respective countries, so Tanzania being one of them. And where we are taking innovative ideas like a green bond. So this year in April, one of the Tanzania water utility issued green bond worth about 22 million United States dollars, which was subscribed for water infrastructure, for sanitation, and the water supply, and the water resource management. So all these contributes to the implementation of NDC's targets, in this particular to the WASH targets. I want to thank you, and I stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sandy. And I know your intention to stop, but I still have a follow-up question. If you can help us to understand. We know that we are going to soon update our NDCs. I just want to get a picture, maybe an overview in terms of financing. Do you think that you have a financing gap when it comes to fully implement those WASH indicators? how can you rate it? How are you faring? If you needed around 600 million for the water sector, how much do you think has been received or allocated, and how much has not been offered already from any other sources, be it internal sources or from development partners, so that we see the financing gap for consideration in the next NDCs?
All right, thank you. So when we are coming to this very important topic on financing, yes, indeed there is a financing gap in the sector, but also even in the other sectors. I can give the scenario first. For example, one of the segments is sanitation. But sanitation, for example, through sewerage, as of now, stands at 13%. Although people have their sanitation infrastructures, which they are not sewered. So you can see there is a serious gap in increasing sanitation coverage. But when we come to water supply, we are mentioning the target of 85% in rural areas and 95% in urban areas next year. But SDGs are around the corner. 2030 is around the corner. So the NDC, the third phase of NDC will be ticking up to 2030, where we have an ambition of universal water coverage.
100%.
100%, which is huge and requires serious investment. So we took some analysis when we were developing the Tanzania Water Investment Program. Of course, it was beyond water. But if we take that analysis we did, we found that we had a budget of 15 billion United States dollars for 6 years up to 2030. With the analysis, 43% was envisaged to come from domestic revenues. This means the other 57% comes now from the collaboration with development partners, climate financing, the private sector, and the like. So if I would try to give the figures like 50-50 as of now, this means financing the water sector still requires the attention it deserves.
Thank you for that.
Right.
I appreciate. A little bit break from the government, and we go to the civil society organizations. And Dr. Six, but I hope you can hear me online. I would like to ask you, what role do you think the government, private sector, and NGOs can play to ensure successful implementation of the NDCs and achievement of the WASH targets? Over to you, Doctor.
Yeah, so thank you so much. Probably because of my connection, might not be able to see me. Sorry. Thank you so much, Madam Facilitator. Hello, everyone in the meeting. Thank you so much for having me. So probably as some of the previous colleagues have already mentioned, in order to enhance the role of WASH within the NDC, as you can imagine, we need a lot of stakeholders, and in that regard, then we need the government working together with the civil society and the private sector, as you have said. And I think Sunday mentioned it very well, that that's where even the ministry was moving towards. And just trying to look back on the ongoing, on the current NDC, I think what has remained very important, I think, was the question of mobilizing the resource together. As you can imagine, different resources comes from through different angles, and we have different capacities and responsibilities. Whilst probably the ministry or the government institution might mobilize resources to put in place infrastructures and whatever, then there's the question of promoting the innovative resources from the, and this is where we see the private sector playing a great role, enhancing then the technology, providing opportunities within as we implement the NDC, especially in support the WASH in collaboration, or enhancing also the role of WASH within the implementation itself. And then for the civil society themselves, as you can imagine, we are obliged to make sure that the communities at the center of the implementation of the NDC itself. With that, there's the question of capacity building, because not everyone comes in the room when the NDCs are developed. You can imagine the whole country coming in one room to develop the NDC. So at the end comes very few, probably, and then you still need to make sure that they know what has been put in the document, but at the end of the time, you need to localize, make sure that the NDC, when you look at WASH, what does it mean to the dry areas? What does it mean to the coastal areas where they experience different issues? And also probably ensuring the information flow. What is very important for me also, and what I've noted, is the question of ensuring monitoring and evaluation. And this has to be played by all the three partners, all the way from the private sector, the civil society, and the government. One has to play the role of collecting the information, other could provide the infrastructure, and the other one could verify to make sure that this information is relevant, and this is what we want if at all we are to achieve, to make sure that the targets are achieved. But indeed, the targets are providing solutions to the affected communities. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Sixbert. I like the localization point the most, because the impact of the climate change are being felt most at the grassroots level. That is where we have droughts and our people are suffering. That is where we are having floods, over flooding, and we see how our communities are suffering. While most of us, maybe in urban areas, the suffering is there, but not as much as compared to the rural areas. So we did a study, and it shows that the awareness of NDC is quite lower the more you go to the sub-national level. So awareness creation, capacity building is key at that level. So thank you for bringing that point. And Stan, I would like to turn to you from the development partners angle. We see that Sandy has pointed out that financing for the WASH indicators is almost 50-50. So they have been able to finance at 50%, and the remaining half is not funded. What do you think government should do to attract more financing for implementation of the NDCs, and particularly to push the achievement of the WASH indicators in the NDCs? Over to you, Stan.
Thank you very much, Marka. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can hear me. My bandwidth is a bit poor, so I will not put on the camera. Okay, thank you. Now, that's a good question, Marka. So I think what the government should do, number one is clear. I think Sandy spoke about it, even Sextus spoke about it. I think there's a need to develop comprehensive and clear NDCs. I think now when we're having the opportunity to revise or prepare NDC 3.0 version, it is very important to have an NDC which is grounded to scientific evidence. I mean, having that with clear and transparent objectives will make it easier for donors to understand the impact of the investment. Number two, I think it is important to strengthen institutional capacity, having strong institutions that are capable to implement and monitor the NDCs, and this will provide confidence to donors. For example, in Tanzania, we have VPO, which is the NDA, and they are much visible at national level. And when you go down there, perhaps you don't see the presence at sub-national level. I think that's an area that maybe we need to put strong emphasis to build that capacity. But again, Sixto spoke about it, engaging stakeholders. This is the time where the government should actively engage with a wide range of stakeholders, including the CSOs, private sector, and the local communities. Because by engaging stakeholders, this can lead to more robust projects and greater public support, making the case of funding stronger. Again, number four, I think is important to create a project pipeline, developing a pipeline of bankable projects that align with the NDC goals. And with this can attract donors' attention. Because if some of these projects are not aligning to NDC goals, they tend up to be rejected or took time for them to be reviewed and being approved. But of course, there is a need also to evaluate existing funding opportunities, like for the Green Climate Fund or Global Environment Funding Facility. These are the areas, apart from the donor funding, but it is important also to explore how best this funding can be tapped into. But most importantly, as the government approach donors, it is very important to demonstrate the core benefits, highlighting the multiple benefits of climate action, such as economic growth, job creation, and so forth, so that people will see multiple advantages. You are supporting climate action, but of course, there are other added advantages that are coming to it. It is important to have transparency and reporting, because as of now, with the NDC that need to be reviewed, but perhaps there's a tracking issue, there's a reporting issue. We don't really know how much we have implemented and how we can track where we are going. But the last one is regarding having the NDC, which is aligning with donor priority. Now, one other area that can support from donors is the government to try to align the asks with donors' priorities. It is important to understand which are donors' goals, donor priorities, so that the requests can be aligning. You know, let us find an area where we meet in the middle. The government has a priority, donors have their own priority, and trying a common ground where the government can ask for support and get the support. But secondly, again, important to demonstrate strong governance and accountability, and that will ensure that whatever support that is provided, the support will be really implemented towards the areas have been asked for. And maybe another important point, we have the NDCs, we have an implementation plan, but it might happen a situation where some of the commitments, some of the targets are not appearing in the national document. For example, San talked about it, the water sector development program. We have the health sector program, nutrition sector program. How are the targets of the NDC reflected in there? Because some donors will come to Tanzania and they'll go to pick that sector document. And if you don't have input in that document, then you miss out on the opportunity. Looking at the national, let's say the national development plan, the national policies, the vision 2055, 2050, these documents should ensure that the targets for NDC are also reflected in those documents so that the donors can easily pick them and support them. As an example, one document that we get tracked is the water sector development program. So if you have NDC targets, indicators reflected there, it can easily get funding, it can easily be tracked, and the issues can be discussed during the thematic work groups. Let me stop there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stan. I think that was a mouthful, but very, very relevant. The issues of transparency, clear objectives, and alignment. I will take those key 3 points. It's really necessary. You know, sometimes when we do project proposals, sometimes the donor would come back and ask, what did you meant by that? Because we do write in a very technical language, and I'm not saying that the donors are not technical, but sometimes they get issues to understand what we mean. And sometimes when we come back to implement even our own project proposal, sometimes we fail to translate what we meant because we were competing and we were trying to impress. So we should try to keep things simple, clear, and understandable. So I will go to my last panel discussant, but not least by importance, because this is our main host when we speak of NDCs, is the big boss at the Vice President's office, Dr. Isa Nyashilo. Could you please summarize by telling us in totality, when we speak about the NDC2, what do you think are the biggest achievements in Tanzania?
Yeah, thank you very much, moderator, for your first for moderating this session, but also I thank the NDC partnership for organizing these sessions, because it has come at a very important time when the COP29 is undertaken, and it is focusing on the mobilizing climate finance so that we can move from commitment to actions, which I think is a very important theme for this session. Yeah, first of all, I will start by saying that Tanzania submitted the NDCs in 2021. After submission, it joined the NDC partnership in 2022. By joining the NDC partnership, a number of opportunities has come. For instance, when we are aiming to come up with NDC 3, we are supposed to do stock taking or NDC impact assessment. If we do the NDC impact assessment, it means that we track at what extent NDC has been implemented at different sectors. We understand, for instance, when it comes to adaptation aspect, we understand to what extent, for instance, the water sector has accelerated to its achievement of its target of ensuring that by 2030, 100% of people in urban and rural areas, they have access to clean drinking water. That will be informed by the NDC impact assessment, which the partnership will support. When it comes to the issue of mitigation, we have some targets that the NDC provide, like to reduce emissions from 30 to 5%. In order to understand whether we have achieved or we have done something to achieve those targets, the NDC impact assessment will cover also the aspect of mitigation. By doing a mitigation assessment, to do greenhouse gas inventories. If we do inventories, we understand to what extent emissions across different sectors has increased or have reduced. For instance, when I talk about energy is among the sectors which they are contributing much to greenhouse gas emissions due to its activities. We have the issue of agriculture and rural CF is also among the sectors which they are contributing a lot in terms of greenhouse gas emissions. We have also the IPPU and the West. This will be informed by the NDC impact assessment data. We will do greenhouse gas inventories to come up with data that will show us data if emissions have reduced or not. This is informed by the NDC impact assessment. Therefore, there are a lot of achievements that the NDC have been achieved, but they are both qualitative and quantitative. But this, in order to be scientific, they will be informed by the parameter assessment and the mitigation assessment, which is part of the greenhouse gas inventories. But when it comes to the issue of sectors, Mr. Sande from the Ministry of Water is trying to explain a number of achievements, for instance, in accessing funding for improving the wash aspect. That are different partners who are coming to invest in Tanzania in different sectors. Most of the donor they want to know if Tanzania is submitted the NDC to Secretariat. If we could not submit the NDC to Secretariat, mean that we will not be able to get funding from those donors. Therefore, after submission of the NDC, a number of opportunities has come that support sectors to access different climate finances. Currently, I cannot know until we do for instance, the assessment and see, for instance, currently how much Tanzania is mobilized climate finance in different sectors to come to implement climate change projects. That needs to be done by doing assessment. But I can assure that since submission of NDC, sectors have benefited. They have accessed climate finance from GCF, from GF, even from adaptation fund, the accessing funding, because most of the requirement is that they can't supposed to have NDC. But also at the policy level, since submission of the NDC, the government, for instance, has adopted a new policy, which is called the Environment Policy of 2021. This policy has integrated the issue of climate change, which in previous policy, we are not part of it. But also the policy has enhanced the issue of carbon market approaches under that of the Paris Agreement. The policy provides that in order to benefit from carbon markets, the policy must recognize those aspects of the Paris Agreement like Article 6. Therefore, the policy was being revised and integrate carbon market issues under the scope of the Paris Agreement. That will be also an opportunity. But also, we have the National Carbon Monitoring Center, which I think in recent has registered more than 63 projects. Most are focusing on the mitigation and adaptation. And those, if you convert in monetary terms, you will get a lot of billions. Even the communities at the local level, for instance, that are focusing on conserving forests, they are getting a lot of money after conserving those forests. But those which are involved, for instance, in clean cooking, they also getting money from different partners. Therefore, NDC has a lot of benefits, both monetary and non-monetary terms. But for instance, in terms of environment conservation, if land being, for instance, afforested or deforested, it means that will increase the environmental integrity by conserving the environment. That will be supported by the NDC. We have also the carbon trade regulation of 2022, which also provide that those projects which are being invested in Tanzania, they must contribute to the NDC targets. Those are some of the key achievements that I can say, but there are a lot of them. If you do assessment across 12 sectors for adaptation and 4 for mitigation, at this point I think you will see a number of achievements NDC have benefited the country after its submission.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nyashilu. I think you have done a lot. My final question, and then we go to Q&A session. In the process of updating NDC 3, how is VPO prepared to make sure that the process is participatory and inclusive?
Yeah. Thank you very much. As you know, NDC is naturally or normally it is a participatory process. The role of VPO is just to bring together different partners, the special sector ministries, development partners, the CSOs, to come and to provide the status quo to what extent they have implemented the NDC or their policy framework and whatever. But so far we have already have a roadmap which is for 12 months. I think the implementation has already started. Even now we are doing some greenhouse gas inventories. We are doing some vulnerability assessment in 14 sectors. The roadmap provides a number of responsible personnel like the development partners, the MDAs, even CSOs are part of the beneficiaries that are supposed to implement the NDC. The another issue, I think it is on some challenges, I think that I think we may encounter when we are going to have the NDC 3. For instance, we are supposed to have smart target for NDC. The previous NDC, when we are tracking, you can find data to come at the point of justifying data. For instance, if you have achieved the 30%, you have to have data. And some point the data are not available. For instance, energy balance, currently, for instance, you can find a challenge even in Tanzania currently is not available. But the Ministry of Energy is doing some effort to come up with energy balance. we have some issue like country-specific emission factors. We normally use global emission factors, not country-specific data. Therefore, we have some challenges that I think they need to be addressed so they can come up with a smart NDC3 that I think you can be tracked, and maybe by 2035 you can be sure that we have reached it or not. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank our panelists for your insightful information. Is there any question to our panel before we close the session? Any question? We can take one or two questions. Yes, please tell us your name and your question. And to who are you directing the question?
Yeah. I'm Mirinja from Madagascar. Thank you to the panelists for sharing how effective you implement WASH targets in your NDCs. I have a question for Sunday. You talked about innovative, innovative climate financing. My question is, what makes the difference? What's the innovation in it? Thank you.
Yes, Sunday, you can respond to that one.
Thank you very much. So it's like, what does it make? What does make it even innovative financing? Yes, the innovation is moving from the conventional style. You know, in the government sectors, when they need money, the first thing is to approach the treasury. So it is complementing from the government resources by including the private sector, by including the climate. So moving away from the traditional mechanisms of getting fund from the treasury. The treasury depends to local revenues or taxes. Now, the example which I gave was, yes, we need a fund here, and we know public fund is not enough. So what could we do? So the government engaged the United Nations Capital Development Fund to develop the green climate, the green bond. And this, of course, was an ambitious attempt, which has given out tremendous results. So this means the innovation is you need now to engage people who are not in the government to bring money into the sector. That was tested, and I can tell you the people who subscribed to the bond, 43% were outside the country. So this means it attracted international subscribers, and 21 million was generated within 2 months. That could have taken a long way of budget cycle to raise that fund, which you could not even raise it maybe at once. But this has come at once. Immediately you go into the implementation. People, of course, people also have that as an expectation. They are paid their dividends. So that is the innovating part of it which we are mentioning. And luckily enough, it is on the green bond, so it's in the climate. Thank you,
Sandy. I think it's okay. I can take 2 last questions, one from here and another one from there, and then we shall close.
In that NDC, you said that it's only 40% or 43% or 47% is generated by the public revenues, and then the rest is subsidized by the NDC investment. If that is the case in the green bond side, how do you repay the money?
Try to make it short.
Yes, very, very quickly. That is the first question even the Treasury asked, how will you repay? So the utilities, they are selling water. They have to refence part of their domestic resources to repay this. So the good news is this bond was issued in April. The first 6 months have elapsed. People have already gained their shares. And this has been registered in Dar es Salaam Stock Exchange and the Lanksberg Stock Exchange. So it's a very best example in the East African region.
So the last one here. Yes, next to you.
Right. One question, that was one part of the question, thank you. you read my mind. The other part of the question was, you talked about transboundary river in terms of your NDCs. Did I hear it right? If I did hear it right, what was the kind of things that you really focused on in terms of NDCs and transboundary river? So if you could shed some light on it.
1 minute.
Okay. To be honest, the point when we are implementing transboundary water management cooperation, it was implemented not in the eye of NDCs. But now, if I look from the back, I see what has been implemented could be contributing to the NDCs. So that is a lesson learned, which will be enhanced in the NDC 3.
With that, I would like to say that we have come to the end of our session, and I would really like to appreciate the government of Tanzania, Minister of Water, Assistant Director Sande, Dr. Nyashilu from Vice President's Office, Stani, Dr. Sixbert Mwanga, and I would like to say a big thank you to Samuel Sood, our coordinator for the event, who could not make it to COP, but he has put great effort to make this side event success. And thank you to all our attendants. Thank you so much.